The Sunday afternoon flight from Seattle to Miami was half full when Aaron boarded, finding his seat in 18A and settling in for the cross-country journey. The mix of passengers was typical for a weekend flight. Families returning from vacations, business travelers getting a jump on the week ahead, a scattering of individuals traveling alone. Everything seemed completely ordinary as the Boeing 737 prepared for departure. But 3 rows ahead of Aaron, in seat 15F by the window, a 15-year-old girl named Jade Thompson sat next to her uncle, with terror building in her chest, desperately hoping someone would notice the subtle signal she was about to start making with her hand. Flight attendant Karen Richards had been flying for 19 years, and during that time she'd taken every training the airline offered, including several recent sessions on human trafficking recognition. The statistics were horrifying: tens of thousands of victims transported annually, many of them on commercial flights. Airlines had started training crew members to spot red flags: older men traveling with young girls who seemed uncomfortable, passengers who wouldn't make eye contact, traveling companions who answered all questions for their companion. Karen had attended the training sessions diligently, but never expected to use them. Human trafficking seemed like something that happened on other flights to other crew members. Until today, the man sitting next to Jade in seat 15E had introduced himself at the gate as Rick Johnson, Jade's uncle, traveling with his niece to visit family in Miami. He'd been charming to the gate agents, friendly to other passengers, attentive to Jade in a way that seemed caring on the surface. But Jade knew the truth. Rick wasn't her uncle. He was a trafficker who'd abducted her from a shopping mall in Seattle 4 days ago. He'd kept her locked in a motel room, controlled every moment, and was now transporting her to Miami where she'd be sold to the highest bidder. Jade had 4 hours to somehow signal for help without Rick noticing. 4 hours before her life as she knew it ended forever. Before Rick had marched her onto the plane, controlling her every move, Jade had seen a TikTok video several months earlier about a hand signal domestic violence victims could use to silently indicate they needed help. The signal for help: palm facing out, thumb tucked in, fingers closed over the thumb. It had been created during the pandemic when abuse victims were trapped at home with their abusers during video calls. Jade had watched the video absently, never imagining she'd need it. But now, trapped next to a trafficker on a plane, it was her only hope. If she could make that signal, if a flight attendant recognized it, maybe someone would help. Karen began her walk through the cabin during boarding, welcoming passengers and helping with luggage. When she reached row 15, something immediately felt off. The girl in the window seat, thin and pale with dark circles under her eyes, wouldn't look at Karen. The man beside her smiled broadly. "Just getting settled, thanks." His hand rested on the girl's shoulder in what looked like a paternal gesture, but Karen's instincts pinged. The girl seemed tense under that hand, frightened. Karen made a mental note to observe them more carefully once they were airborne. Aaron noticed the pair in row 15 briefly during boarding, an older man and a teenage girl, nothing particularly remarkable except the girl seemed withdrawn and unhappy. Aaron assumed typical family travel friction, a teenager forced on a trip she didn't want to take. He pulled out his laptop and prepared to work during the flight. Behind him, a mother with 2 young children struggled with car seats. Across the aisle, a businessman was already on his phone, squeezing in last-minute calls. Normal, ordinary, routine. Nobody noticed the girl in 15F using her phone one last time before Rick confiscated it, desperately searching for information about the hand signal she half remembered from TikTok. Was it thumb tucked in or out? Palm forward or back? She thought she remembered but wasn't certain. It had to be perfect or no one would understand. The plane pushed back and took off smoothly, climbing through scattered clouds into clear autumn sky. Rick kept his hand on Jade's arm the entire time, a warning grip that hurt slightly but wouldn't leave visible marks. "Remember what I told you," he whispered as they reached cruising altitude. "You're my niece. We're visiting your grandparents. You say one wrong word, make one wrong move, and your little brother dies. I have people watching him right now. You understand?" Jade nodded, tears threatening, but she forced them back. Rick had shown her photos of her 10-year-old brother at his school, had detailed exactly what would happen if she tried to escape. She believed him. The threat was real. But wait, here's what Jade had figured out. Rick couldn't watch her every second. Eventually he'd have to use the bathroom or get distracted. And flight attendants walked up and down the aisle repeatedly during flights. If she could position her hand where they'd see it, if she could make the signal without Rick noticing, maybe someone would recognize it. It was a desperate plan with 1,000 ways to fail, but it was the only plan she had. She waited, heart pounding, for the right moment. About 45 minutes into the flight, Karen began the beverage service. She pushed her cart down the aisle, smiling and chatting with passengers, but her attention kept drifting back to row 15. Something about that pair bothered her. The man was overly talkative, answering for the girl before Karen could even direct questions to her. She'll have water, thanks. She's not feeling well, little airsick. The girl still wouldn't meet Karen's eyes. Karen handed over the water and moved on, but she couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. Rick needed to use the bathroom. He'd been holding it, not wanting to leave Jade unsupervised, but finally the pressure was too much. He leaned close to Jade. I'm going to the bathroom. You don't move, you don't speak to anyone. Remember what happens to your brother if you do. Jade nodded, and Rick stood, walking toward the rear lavatory. This was it. This was Jade's chance. Her hands were shaking as she positioned her right hand on the armrest where the aisle could see it. Palm facing out, thumb tucked under, fingers folded over the thumb. The signal. She held it there, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. Karen was in the galley preparing for the meal service when her colleague Marcus said, "The girl in 15F, you notice anything odd about her?" Karen nodded. Something feels off. The man with her is too controlling. She seems scared. Marcus lowered his voice. I just walked past and she has her hand positioned weird on the armrest, like a specific gesture. I don't know if it means anything, but Karen's training suddenly clicked. The hand signal training from 3 months ago. Palm out, thumb tucked, fingers closed over it. The signal for help. Oh my God, Karen breathed. That's the domestic violence signal. She's signaling for help. Karen moved immediately but carefully, walking casually up the aisle as if continuing her service duties. As she approached row 15, she could see it clearly. The girl's right hand positioned deliberately on the armrest, making the exact signal. Jade's eyes met Karen's for just a second, and the desperate plea in them was unmistakable. Karen gave the tiniest nod and kept walking, not wanting to draw attention, but her mind was racing. The girl was signaling she needed help. The man she was with was likely not her uncle. This was human trafficking. This was what all the training had been for. Karen went directly to the cockpit, knocking with the urgent pattern. Captain Sandra Williams opened the door. What's wrong? Karen explained quickly. The uncomfortable pair in row 15, the girl making the distress hand signal, her suspicion this was a trafficking situation. Sandra's expression hardened. Are you certain about the signal? Karen nodded. Positive, I attended the training. That's the signal for help. She's asking for intervention. Sandra immediately got on the secure radio to air traffic control. We have a suspected human trafficking situation on board. Minor female passenger making distress signals, requesting law enforcement meet aircraft on arrival Miami. But this is where it became dangerous. Rick returned from the bathroom, sliding back into his seat beside Jade. He saw immediately that her hand position had changed. What were you doing? His voice was quiet but menacing. Jade's stomach clenched with fear. Nothing, just resting my hand. Rick's eyes narrowed. Did anyone come by? Did you talk to anyone? Jade shook her head frantically. No, I swear, I didn't move, I didn't say anything. Rick studied her face, trying to determine if she was lying. Finally, he seemed satisfied. Good girl, keep it that way. Karen returned to the galley where Sandra had joined her and Marcus. We have a problem, Sandra said quietly. If we're wrong about this, if it's just an uncle and his niece who happens to be unhappy about traveling, we're going to cause a scene and possibly open the airline to lawsuits. But if we're right, and we do nothing, she didn't finish. They all knew. If this was trafficking and they didn't act, that girl's life was over. Sandra made the decision. We proceed as if it's trafficking. Better to be wrong and apologize than right and have done nothing. Karen, I need you to observe them carefully. See if you can get the girl alone. Ask her directly if she needs help. But be subtle. If the man suspects we're onto him, he could become violent. Aaron noticed increased activity among the flight crew. Karen and another attendant were conferring in whispers, glancing toward the front of the plane. Something was happening, but Aaron couldn't tell what. He returned his attention to his laptop, unaware that 3 rows ahead, a teenage girl was trying not to shake with terror as her captor sat beside her, suspicious and alert, while flight crew tried to figure out how to rescue her without triggering violence. Karen approached row 15 with a bright smile, carrying blankets. Hi there, it's getting a bit chilly in the cabin. Can I offer you both blankets? Rick smiled back. No thanks, we're fine. But Karen persisted, directing her attention to Jade. Miss, are you sure? You look cold. How about you? It was a direct question to Jade, forcing Rick to either answer for her, which would reinforce Karen's suspicions, or let her speak. Rick hesitated, then nodded at Jade. Go ahead, answer the nice flight attendant. Jade's voice came out barely above a whisper. Yes, please, I'm cold. Karen handed Jade a blanket, and as she did, she leaned slightly closer. Are you okay, honey? Do you need anything? It was an open question, a chance for Jade to say something, anything. But Rick was watching carefully, and Jade could feel his warning grip tightening on her other arm, hidden under the armrest where Karen couldn't see. I'm fine, thank you. Karen's heart sank, but she smiled and moved on. She'd tried. She'd given Jade an opening, but the girl was too scared to take it, which actually confirmed Karen's suspicions more than it eased them. This was trafficking. She was certain now. Sandra made a decision. She announced over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to changing weather conditions in Miami, we're going to begin our descent a bit earlier than planned. Flight attendants, please begin preparing the cabin for landing." It was a lie. The weather in Miami was perfect, but it gave Sandra justification for what came next. "I'm descending now, and we're landing early," she told air traffic control. "I want law enforcement ready the moment we touch down. This situation feels increasingly dangerous. You won't believe what happened during the descent." Karen had a plan, risky but necessary. She approached row 15 again, this time with her colleague Marcus. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we need to move you to a different seat for weight distribution during landing. FAA requirements." It was complete nonsense. Weight distribution didn't require moving a single passenger, but Karen said it with such authority that Rick hesitated. "Why just me? What about my niece?" Karen smiled apologetically. "She's fine where she is. We just need to balance the aircraft. It'll only be for landing. You can sit in 23C, just for a few minutes." Rick's suspicion flared. This didn't make sense, but causing a scene might draw more attention than complying. He stood slowly, gathering his carry-on bag, giving Jade a pointed look. "I'll be right back there, Jade. Right behind you. You stay put." The threat was clear. Jade nodded, not trusting her voice. Rick moved to the back of the plane, Marcus accompanying him, while Karen stayed near row 15. The moment Rick was out of earshot, Karen knelt beside Jade's seat. "Honey, I saw your hand signal. I know what it means. Are you in danger? Is that man trafficking you?" Karen's voice was low, urgent, kind. Jade's dam broke. Tears poured down her face. "Yes, he's not my uncle. He kidnapped me. He's taking me to Miami to sell me. He said if I try to escape, his people will kill my little brother. Please help me. Please." Karen gripped Jade's hand. "You're safe now. I promise. We're landing early, and police are going to arrest him the moment we touch down. You're not getting off this plane with him. Your brother will be safe too. The police will protect him. You did exactly right by signaling for help. You're so brave." Jade couldn't stop crying, relief and terror and exhaustion all pouring out at once. Karen stayed with her, holding her hand, providing a physical barrier between Jade and the back of the plane where Rick sat, growing increasingly suspicious. Marcus kept Rick engaged in conversation, preventing him from returning to his seat. "So where in Miami are you visiting? Family? Business? What do you do for work?" Marcus's cheerful questions were designed to keep Rick occupied, but Rick's answers were getting shorter, more clipped. He knew something was wrong. The plane descended rapidly, Sandra pushing the limits of safe descent rates to get on the ground faster. Air traffic control had cleared all other traffic, giving Flight 847 priority landing. Police cars surrounded the gate. FBI agents were boarding the moment the door opened. In the cabin, tension was building. Rick was standing now, trying to see forward, to check on Jade. Marcus physically blocked his view. "Sir, you need to remain seated. We're landing." Rick's voice turned hard. "Get out of my way. I need to check on my niece." Marcus stood firm. "Sir, sit down now or you'll be restrained." That's when Rick realized he'd been caught. His face transformed from forced friendliness to rage. He lunged past Marcus toward the front of the plane, toward Jade. Passengers screamed. Marcus grabbed Rick from behind, wrestling him back. Aaron, along with 2 other male passengers, jumped up to help. Together they pinned Rick to the floor of the aisle, holding him down while he screamed obscenities and threats. "She's mine. I paid for her. You can't take her. I'll kill her brother. I'll kill all of you." The plane touched down hard, Sandra not concerned with a smooth landing, just a fast one. The moment they reached the gate, the doors burst open. FBI agents and police officers flooded in. Rick was still pinned to the floor, still screaming threats. Officers cuffed him and dragged him off the plane while he fought and shouted. Jade sat in her seat, shaking, Karen's arms around her, watching her captor being removed. It was over. 4 days of hell were over. She was safe, but here's what made this rescue even more significant. Rick Johnson, whose real name was Marcus Webb, was a major player in an interstate trafficking ring. When FBI agents searched his phone and belongings, they found evidence of 12 other girls he'd trafficked over the past 3 years. Contact information for buyers, encrypted messages detailing transactions, photos of victims. Jade's rescue broke open an entire network. Within 48 hours, FBI raids across 5 states resulted in 17 arrests, and the rescue of 9 girls currently being held. Jade's brother was picked up from school by police before Rick's associates could reach him. Her family, who'd been desperately searching for her since she disappeared from the mall, was reunited with her at the FBI field office in Miami. Her mother collapsed in sobs, holding Jade and repeating, "Thank God, thank God, thank God." Her father, a stoic man, cried openly. Her little brother clung to her, not understanding everything but knowing his sister was home and safe. The family had been shattered. Now they were whole. Karen Richards became an unlikely hero, featured in news coverage and airline industry publications, but she consistently deflected praise. Jade saved herself. She remembered that hand signal and had the courage to use it. I just recognized it because I'd been trained. The real heroes are the people who created that signal, who spread awareness about it, who made sure flight attendants like me knew what to look for. Jade did the hard part. She took the risk. I just responded. The signal for help, created by the Canadian Women's Foundation during the pandemic, gained massive attention after Jade's rescue. Social media exploded with people sharing the signal, teaching it to their children, discussing its importance. Jade Thompson is alive because she saw a TikTok video. One viral post read, "Teach your kids this signal. Teach yourself. You never know when you might need it or see someone using it. It saves lives." Demonstrations of the signal were shared millions of times. Jade's recovery was slow but steady. The 4 days of captivity had traumatized her, but therapy helped, and the knowledge that her rescue had saved 9 other girls gave her purpose. 6 months after her rescue, she recorded a video message that was shared by the Canadian Women's Foundation. "I was kidnapped from a shopping mall. It can happen to anyone, but I remembered seeing a hand signal on social media. I used it on a plane, and a flight attendant recognized it. That signal saved my life. Learn it, share it. You might save someone's life too." Aaron's article about Jade's rescue, titled "The Hand Signal That Saved a Life at 35,000 Feet," became one of his most widely read pieces. It detailed not just Jade's story, but the importance of awareness, training, and simple tools like the signal for help that could bridge the gap between victims and potential rescuers. "We're surrounded by people in crisis," Aaron wrote, "trafficking victims, domestic violence survivors, people in desperate situations. Most of the time they can't ask for help verbally, but they can signal, if we're watching, if we're trained, if we care enough to notice and act." Karen Richards was watching. She was trained, she noticed and acted. That's why Jade Thompson is alive and free. The airline industry overhauled its human trafficking training after Jade's case. The signal for help was added to all flight attendant training programs worldwide. Posters showing the signal were placed in airport bathrooms. Educational materials were provided to passengers. The goal was to make everyone aware if you see someone making this signal, they need help. Call authorities, intervene safely, don't ignore it. That simple gesture, palm out, thumb tucked, fingers closed over thumb, became a lifeline taught to millions. Marcus Webb was convicted on 17 counts of human trafficking, kidnapping, and related charges. His trial revealed the full horror of his operation. Girls as young as 13 abducted, controlled through threats and violence, sold to buyers across the country and internationally. Jade and 2 other survivors testified at his trial. Jade's testimony was powerful. "He stole 4 days of my life. He planned to steal the rest of my life. But I fought back the only way I could. I made a hand signal, and someone saw it. That's why I'm here testifying instead of disappearing forever. Every trafficking victim deserves the chance I got. We need more Karen Richards in the world. People who pay attention, who recognize distress, who act." Marcus Webb was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. At sentencing, the judge addressed him directly. "You preyed on children. You treated human beings as commodities. You planned to sell a 15-year-old girl into sexual slavery. But she was smarter than you, braver than you, and the people around her were more alert than you anticipated. You failed. She won, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison, which is more mercy than you showed any of your victims." Webb showed no remorse, further cementing the rightness of the life sentence. Karen and Jade stayed in contact, forming an unlikely but deep friendship. Karen attended Jade's high school graduation, watching with pride as Jade, who'd almost disappeared into trafficking, instead walked across the stage to receive her diploma and scholarship offers from multiple universities. "I want to be an FBI agent," Jade told Karen at the graduation party. "I want to hunt traffickers like the man who took me. I want to save other girls. Will you write me a recommendation letter for the FBI Academy?" Karen, crying, hugged her tightly. "It would be the greatest honor of my life." 3 years after her rescue, Jade spoke at a conference on human trafficking prevention. She stood before hundreds of law enforcement officers, social workers, educators, and advocates. "I'm here today because I saw a TikTok video months before I was kidnapped, a video showing a hand signal. When I was trapped on a plane next to my trafficker, that random video I'd watched became my lifeline. I made the signal. A trained flight attendant saw it and recognized it. That split second of awareness saved my life and led to the rescue of 9 other girls." Jade continued, her voice strong. "But I think about how many victims don't know that signal. How many flight attendants aren't trained to recognize it? How many people see someone in distress but don't know how to interpret the signs? We need universal awareness. The signal for help should be taught in every school, every workplace, every public space. Everyone should know how to use it and how to recognize it. That's how we save lives, through awareness, training, and the courage to act when we see it. The conference gave Jade a standing ovation. Among the audience were several of the girls who'd been rescued after Jade's case broke open the trafficking ring. They'd formed a support group, meeting regularly to process their trauma and support each other's healing. Jade had become an informal leader of the group, her willingness to speak publicly and advocate giving the others courage. Together they were transforming from victims into survivors, into advocates. Their suffering had purpose now. They were changing systems, educating public, saving future victims. 5 years after the rescue, the Canadian Women's Foundation honored both Jade and Karen at their annual gala. The foundation had tracked the impact of the signal for help since Jade's case made it famous. The signal had been used successfully to alert help in over 200 documented cases of domestic violence, kidnapping, and trafficking. Countless more cases likely existed where victims used it and received help without the incident making news. The signal had become a legitimate, recognized tool for silent communication of distress. At the gala, Jade and Karen shared the stage. Karen spoke first. 5 years ago, a brave 15-year-old girl made a hand signal that I'd been trained to recognize. That moment changed both our lives. It reminded me that the small things matter. Taking a training session seriously, paying attention during flights, trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. Those small things add up to saving lives. I urge everyone here, learn the signal, teach others, stay alert. You never know when you might be the Karen in someone's story. The person who notices, who acts, who saves a life. Then Jade spoke, now 20 years old and college student majoring in criminal justice. Karen says, I saved myself, but I couldn't have done it without her watching, recognizing, acting. We saved each other. She gave me back my future. I was supposed to disappear. Instead, I'm here studying to join the FBI, working to dismantle trafficking networks. That's not just survival, that's transformation. That's turning trauma into purpose. I want every trafficking victim to have the chance I had, to signal for help and have someone see it. That's why this signal matters. That's why training matters. That's why awareness matters. Together we can catch people when they're falling. We can see the silent screams. We can save lives. The audience erupted in applause, many crying. The power of one hand signal, one alert flight attendant, one moment of recognition had rippled out across 5 years to save hundreds. Jade's courage to use the signal, Karen's training to recognize it, the foundation's work to spread awareness, law enforcement's response to break the trafficking ring. Each link in the chain mattered. Remove any one, and Jade disappears forever. But the chain held. She was saved. Others were saved because of her. The ripples continued spreading. 10 years after the rescue, Jade graduated from FBI Academy, specializing in human trafficking cases. At her graduation ceremony, Karen was there, along with Jade's family, the other girls from the trafficking ring who'd been rescued, and Captain Sandra Williams, who'd made the call to descend early and get law enforcement ready. They were Jade's chosen family now, bound by the crisis that had almost destroyed her, but instead had defined her mission. Today I become an FBI agent, Jade said in her speech. I hunt the monsters who stole my childhood. I find the victims who are still trapped. And I teach everyone I can about the signal for help, because awareness saves lives. That's my purpose. That's my calling. And it all started with a hand signal on a plane. Aaron's final article about Jade, published on the 10th anniversary of her rescue, reflected on transformation and purpose. 10 years ago, Jade Thompson was a terrified 15-year-old sitting next to a trafficker, making a desperate hand signal and praying someone would see it. Karen Richards saw it. A rescue followed. A trafficking ring fell. 9 girls came home, and Jade found her purpose, transforming from victim to FBI agent dedicated to saving others. That's the power of one moment, one signal, one person paying attention, one intervention that changes everything. Jade's story reminds us that we're all potential rescuers, if we're watching, if we're trained, if we care enough to act when we see someone signaling for help. The signal for help, palm out, thumb tucked in, fingers folded over, became universally recognized in the decade following Jade's rescue. Parents taught children. Schools included it in safety curricula. Workplaces displayed posters. Social media kept spreading awareness. And across those 10 years, documented cases of the signal being used successfully to obtain help numbered in the thousands. Domestic violence victims on video calls, trafficking victims in public spaces, kidnapping victims in vehicles. Over and over, the simple gesture connected people in distress with people positioned to help. Karen Richards, now retired from flying, volunteered full-time with trafficking prevention organizations. She trained flight crews, hotel staff, rideshare drivers, anyone who might encounter victims being transported.
You don't need superpowers to save a life, Karen would tell training groups. You need awareness, training, willingness to trust your instincts, and knowledge of the signal for help. That combination saved Jade Thompson. That combination has saved thousands since. That combination can save the next victim you encounter. So pay attention, learn the signal, and act when you see it. Jade's little brother, now 20 years old himself, often reflected on how close he'd come to losing his sister. I don't remember much about when she disappeared, he told Aaron in an interview. I was only 10, but I remember the terror in my parents' faces, the police cars, the horrible waiting, and then the miracle. She was found. She was coming home. Our family got put back together. I know we're lucky. Most kidnapping stories don't end like ours. That's why Jade does what she does now, to give other families the ending we got.
The trafficking network that Marcus Webb had operated was completely dismantled in the years following his arrest. The 17 people arrested in the initial raids led to further investigations that ultimately brought down over 50 people across a decade: traffickers, buyers, facilitators. The FBI estimated the network had victimized at least 80 girls over its years of operation. Most were never found, already lost to international trafficking. But 12 victims were rescued and returned to families in the years after Jade's case broke the network open. 12 families got their daughters back because Jade remembered a hand signal, and Karen recognized it. 15 years after Flight 84-7, Jade Thompson stood in an airport, watching planes take off and land. She'd just completed an operation that rescued 6 girls from a trafficking ring in Texas. She was exhausted but satisfied. 6 more girls going home, 6 more families made whole. As she watched a plane climb into the sky, Jade thought about that terrified 15-year-old she'd been, sitting next to Marcus Webb, making a desperate hand signal. That girl had saved herself and hadn't even known how far the ripples would spread. Jade pulled out her phone and texted Karen, "Just rescued 6 girls in Texas op. Thinking about you and that flight. Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for giving me the future that led me here. Every life I save is because you saved mine first. Love you." Karen's response came immediately. "You saved yourself, honey. I just happened to be watching. Proud of you beyond words. Keep saving them. Keep spreading the signal. Keep being the hero you've always been." Aaron's book about extraordinary moments featuring ordinary people included Jade and Karen's story as the centerpiece. The chapter was titled "The Signal at 35,000 Feet, How One Gesture Saved a Life and Changed a System." It detailed not just the rescue but the aftermath. The trafficking ring dismantled, the awareness spread, the lives saved because of increased knowledge about the signal for help. "We live surrounded by silent cries for help," Aaron wrote. "People desperate for rescue but unable to ask aloud. The signal for help gives them a voice, but only if we're listening, only if we know what to look for, only if we care enough to act." Karen Richards was listening. Jade Thompson found her voice. Together, they proved that ordinary people in ordinary moments can create extraordinary change. One hand signal, one alert flight attendant, one moment of recognition. That's all it takes. That's everything it takes. That's how lives get saved. The signal for help continues saving lives. Right now, somewhere, someone is using it. Someone is seeing it. A rescue is happening because of awareness, training, courage, Jade Thompson's legacy, Karen Richards' attention, the Canadian Women's Foundation's creation, all of it rippling forward through time, catching people who are falling, seeing people who are invisible, saving people who are desperate. That's the power of symbols, of training, of caring. That's the power of one 15-year-old girl who refused to disappear without fighting back. That's the power of one flight attendant who paid attention when it mattered most. That's justice. That's rescue. That's love in its most practical, powerful form, seeing someone signal for help and responding with everything you have.